Hello everyone and welcome to our latest UK General Election Opinion Poll Tracker video for January 2022. So we're going to be having a look at all of the opinion polls that were conducted during December. We'll have a look at the latest prediction from Electoral Calculus for the next UK General Election based on those opinion polls. We'll have a look at approval ratings or disapproval ratings, perhaps, for Boris Johnson and also for Sir Keir Starmer. And we'll see how the government overall is doing as we move into the beginning of 2022. So I'll get off that for you in a second. Just say that these videos are once a month at the moment. So I've been doing these since last summer. Been quite a bit of interest in this. And I will think that as we get closer and closer to the general election, which isn't scheduled until 2024, that the interest will grow. And when we get in towards the general election period, we'll probably start doing these a little bit more regularly. Now, of course, we know that the Prime Minister is in quite a bit of trouble at the moment. His job is probably on the line, and it could be that he is dispatched quite soon by his party, by the Conservative Party. And if so, we'll probably do a video around the time of his resignation, if he does indeed resign, looking at the runners and riders and where they rate within public opinion. I'll do my best to do that. There will be opinion poll, I'm sure, appearing quite shortly, looking at the various possibilities and candidates to take his job and how they rate with the general public versus Boris Johnson himself. But I'm getting ahead of myself because no leadership contest has been triggered yet, so we should wait and see how that all resolves itself. But this video is going to be focusing on the latest prediction from Electoral Calculus and also on December's opinion polls. If you're enjoying these videos, please can you like, share and subscribe, and make sure you do that, and you'll be notified. If you click all notifications, you'll be notified by YouTube when we release these videos. As I say, they are once a month at the moment, but we'll get a little bit more regular, hopefully, when we get closer towards the general election. Okay, so I think we will now give you the latest prediction from Electoral Calculus based on the opinion polls that were conducted throughout the month of December. Let's count it down, shall we? 1, 2, 3. Here it is. So the latest prediction from Electoral Calculus is that Labour is just 18 short of a majority. So a hung parliament, no overall majority is favoured, but with Labour now as the largest party within that hung parliament, 18 short of a majority, they would be able to govern. If they got that result in a general election, they would be able to do a deal with various other parties, and would be able to govern either as a minority government initially and then another election in a year or so's time, or with some sort of coalition or loose arrangement. But yeah, that's the latest prediction anyway. 18 short of a majority. Let's go through it then and see how the numbers are looking. So here we go then. So we've got our party columns just here. We've got 2019 votes just here, 2019 seats just here, predicted votes just there, and then the margin of error, predicted seats within the margin of error just here. So let's deal with the Conservative Party first of all. So of course in 2019 they got 44.7% of vote, their highest vote share since the 1970 general election. It gave them 365 seats, an overall majority of around 80. Well, based on December's opinion polls, they are having a predicted vote share now of 32.3%. So they have lost over 12% of their vote share since the December 2019 general election. That gives them a central predicted seat tally of 247. There is a margin of error within that, of course, so at the low end they could be as low as 133, which would be a catastrophic result, of course, would take them lower than they got in 1997, for example. At the high end, they could go to 339 and just get into, government as a majority government. That's at the very highest end of the margin for error. But the central prediction has them down up close to 256. For Labour, and this is a big turnaround on what we saw for Labour, when we started these back in the summer. So in the 2019 general election, they got 33% of the vote. Not too bad, really, for a vote share, but that gave them just 203 seats, because the Conservatives were so high, 44.7%. So although their vote share did hold up, they piled on a lot of seats, a lot of votes in certain seats. And that held them up at 33%. Nevertheless, they got 203 seats overall, which is their worst result since 1935 general election. Well, now the central prediction for them is to be on 38.4% of the vote, which gives them a central predicted seat tally of 308 seats. Again, the margin for error with that, at the low end, they could be as low as 220 seats, and at the high end they could be as high as 424 seats, which would give them an absolute landslide. Of course, that would happen if the Conservatives went down to their lowest score, and Labour went up to their highest score within the margin of error. They could get a landslide. But again, the central prediction leaves them on 308, which is 18 short of the 326 that they need to form an overall majority. But as far as the other parties are concerned, Liberal Democrats are not really doing any different from what they did in 2019. So 2019 they was on 11.8%, they're now on 11.4%. Central prediction has them on 11 seats, that's where they was in 2019. Margin of error is as low as 5 and as high as 34. Reform, no change for them, are a little bit up, 3.1% compared to where we were as a Brexit party in 2019, but nevertheless it leaves them without any seats. The Greens, they're well up. The Greens are absolutely flying, really. Based on 2019, they only got 2.8% of the vote, but now we're at 6.2% of the vote. But because of first past post, that does absolutely nothing for them in terms of seat tally, so they are still only on one seat within the central prediction, and at the high end they could get two. At the low end they hang on to their one seat. SNP on 4% in 2019, or on 4.2% predicted now. So 2019 they got 48 seats, now they're predicted to get 59 seats. That's because of the collapse of the Conservative vote, of course. And at the low end they're down to 44, at the high end we're at 59. Basically, the SNP forecast to win pretty much every seat in Scotland at the moment. As far as Plaid is concerned, no real changes to them. They got 4 seats in 2019. They get 5 seats on the central prediction. Now, margin of error of that is they could get as high as 10 or as low as 3. And they've got all of the other parties down here. SDLP, DUP, Sinn Féin, for example. Remember, Sinn Féin don't take their seats. Which, of course, that means that the Labour being short overall of 18 of the majority means they're actually short less of that, because you have to take off the 7 that Sinn Féin won't take. So Labour are very close, actually, to governing outright there on that prediction. Still a little bit short, but they could probably govern as a minority and just dare other parties to vote down their budget and then have an election in a year or two afterwards. They could do some sort of arrangement with the Liberal Democrats in particular, maybe the SNP as well. But how they are there, assuming Sinn Féin don't take their seats, which they don't, they really aren't all that far away from being able to govern on that projection, which is a huge turnaround of what we saw in the summer. So what's happened with these opinion polls? Let's have a look at them then. So these are the polls that the projection is based upon. These are all of them from Wikipedia. So we can begin right way down at the 1st to 2nd of December just here with YouGov, and we finish off the end of December into New Year with DeltaPoll for the Mail on Sunday, that's released over New Year, was conducted from the 23rd to the 30th of December. So see at the beginning of December, the Conservatives do have a couple of very slight rallies. We've got these blue columns just here, because we had a big shift in November. Let's look at last month's video to see the shift that took place through October and November. There's quite a dramatic swing from Labour to the Conservatives during October and November. We get to the beginning of December, and the Conservatives are managing to get 1 or 2 opinion poll leads. Very minor, very modest, but they're still hanging on. But from around sort of 8 December onwards, this poll, repeal Wilton Strategies, has Labour 4% ahead And then through the rest of the polls during December, Labour hang on to their lead. They actually get quite substantial leads as well. Not double digits, not yet double-digit leads. But we see that Labour goes up to like 9% with Opinium, just here, this poll here, Opinium for the Observer, which was conducted on the 9th to the 10th, the 8th to the 10th, I should say, of December. And that gets Labour actually over the all-important 40% barrier. So a lot of the time, 40% is like a minimum requirement to be able to get a majority government. You see, if a party gets to 40%, often, not always, it didn't happen in 2017, for example, when Conservatives were over 40%, but then again, Labour was over 40% as well. So occasionally, 40% won't give you a majority, but very often in our first past the post system, if a party gets to 40% of the vote, the other party will, the other main opposition party, will tend to be like in the mid to low 30%, and that means that the party that's at 40% or more gets to form a government with a majority. So 40% is kind of like a psychological barrier, I suppose, really. If a party gets to 40%, then they can say that they are doing, really quite well. And that poll for Opinion does that. That gets Labour to 41% compared to Conservatives on 32%. That will give Labour a slight overall majority. Again, if we come up here, we see more polls later on in December. Focal data, for example, has Labour on 40%, Conservatives on 32%. We've got DeltaPoll, again, has Labour on 40%, but Conservatives creeping up a little bit on 35% as well. So the leads are like 5%, 7%, 7%, 8%, 8%, 6%, 5%, 4%, 8%, 5%. 5%, 4%, 7%, 7%, 8%, 6%, 9%. That's the biggest lead, that Opinion poll just there. 5%, 8%, 4%, 6%. And so, yeah, it's like a single-digit lead, but upper single digits, mid to upper single digits. Not yet a double-digit lead for Labour. I would think that's probably... it's not going to be long before that happens for Labour, that they get a double-digit lead. But definitely a very encouraging month for Labour and, Labour supporters during December, where they had a consistent lead really through most of it, other than the 3 polls that were conducted early on in the month. The Conservatives, they're not absolutely dropping into the abyss, but they are much, much lower, obviously, in like mid to low 30s with both of these polls. Most of them, we start off in the upper 30s here, 37%, 38%, and then they shift down to like 34%, 33%, 32%. So yeah, they're doing pretty badly, although the last poll did happen at 35%. So definitely there's been quite a significant swing from, and I think this is perhaps the most important aspect, the swing has been directly from Conservatives to Labour, because you haven't seen all that much of an increase in like Liberal Democrats, or there's been a little bit of an increase in Reform, but I think the main swing has been from Conservative to Labour here, which is a little bit more worrying for the Conservatives. If their vote was splintering off all over the place, then there would be the prospect that they could be able to get that back. And I suppose, some of their vote has gone to Reform as well. But I think there has been, a clear shift from Conservative to Labour, which would be quite concerning for them. This is how the graph is looking from the last election to present. So, of course, we begin with this Parliament in December 2019, where Conservatives have a large lead over Labour. They're in the 40s, Labour are down in the low 30s. That lead grows into the spring of 2020. So Conservatives go over 50%, have an absolutely massive lead. Labour goes under 30% during the spring of 2020. But then into the summer, we get this narrowing, summer of 2020, and a bit of a crossover almost occurs by the autumn to early winter 2020-2021. Then the vaccine rollout begins in early 2021. And we see the Conservatives regaining their lead. So as we go through 2021, most of that year, we see the Conservatives with a substantial lead over Labour, which is quite unusual for that to happen. In the second year of the Parliament, you'd expect the opposition to be gaining ground, but we don't really see that. till we get to the very end of 2021, when a dramatic shift does take place through the autumn of 2021. We see crossover occurring just there, and that lasts into December. The very latest has actually seen Labour drop a little bit, but still maintain their lead. Conservatives rise a little bit, but still behind. Those are the earliest polls from January 2022. I would expect that's about as good as it will get for Conservatives for the time being, with everything that's going on, with parties and downstream and whatnot. So probably see that line dropping again. And the Labour line increasing, I would have thought, over the polls that happen during the rest of January 2022. We'll examine that and go for that, of course, next month. Liberal Democrats have risen a little bit. So the yellow line here is the Liberal Democrats, or the orange line. That's lifted ever so slightly up, but not a great deal. Greens have dropped slightly. Reform have dropped slightly. SNP are pretty static. As far as approval is concerned, so this is how Boris Johnson's approval looks from September to the last poll we can look at for Boris Johnson's approval is to 20th of December, which was YouGov. There are various ways you can ask this, like, well, badly for YouGov, satisfied, dissatisfied for MORI, approved, disapproved, favourable, unfavourable, etc., etc. You can see that throughout this autumn, Boris Johnson, into winter, Boris Johnson has been negative with his approval ratings, but has got increasingly negative as we have gone along. So the first poll, Opinium, on the 2nd, 3rd of December, has a 35% approving of Boris Johnson, 45% disapproving, which gives him a net approval rating of -10. But look how that compares to the last poll on the 20th of December, which was YouGov, which asked well badly, and for that poll, only 23% approve of Boris Johnson there. 71%, that's right, 71% disapprove of him, which gives him an overall net approval rating of -48, which is absolutely terrible. His approval has absolutely cratered. It's become extremely unpopular. You can see this does happen, particularly sort of late on in the year. So through most of the autumn, his approval rating is not that out of the ordinary for a Prime Minister 2 years in. Minus double digits, sometimes minus single digits, but not absolutely cratering. It's really from like November onwards. We see him going down to -20. We've got another poll just here, -35 for his overall net approval rating. And I say that last poll, absolutely dreadful, has him at -48 with 71% disapproving and 23% approving. How does that compare to Keir Starmer? This is how Keir Starmer is looking with his approval and disapproval ratings. So generally, he's been very unpopular as well, but we do have one poll right at the very end that was released on Christmas Day, bizarrely, like for the papers on Boxing Day, that has him in the green, which is the first time we've seen that. I think that's probably the first time we've seen that since he became leader. Really, maybe, I don't know, but it's been a long time anyway since we've seen him in the green. But through most of the autumn and into December, he has a negative approval rating, which is quite unusual for a leader of the opposition to be that unpopular. But we see that final poll, Opinium, which was released on Christmas Day, bizarrely, showing that 35% approved of Keir Starmer on Christmas Day and 31% disapproved of him on Christmas Day, which gave him a net positive, yes, that's right, positive approval rating for Keir Starmer of +4. It's nothing particularly to get excited about for Keir Starmer fans. You would think that he would have a positive approval rating, given that he's leader of the opposition, he's not doing anything to upset anybody, and he should be getting all of the support that like the Prime Minister is losing. So it's nothing that you wouldn't think that he should be doing, but it is of note that finally we have got Keir Starmer there in the green, which is quite unusual for him and is noteworthy. Finally, in terms of the government, how is the government doing in terms of its approval and disapproval? This is from YouGov. Not quite finally, actually. Got one more thing to show you after this. This is from YouGov. And we can see that the government is becoming increasingly unpopular, as Boris Johnson is becoming increasingly unpopular, so too is his government. So now, as of the very latest, 20th of December, I think this gets us to, no, actually, get us a little bit further on than that, so we can get to 10th of January, there it is. So at that point, we've got 57%. That are disapproving of Boris Johnson's government, and 23% that are approving of his government. Boris Johnson's government is almost, in terms of people approving of it, down with the don't knows, which is a very bad sign, really. The government is the most unpopular it's been. It did go from quite an unpopular period in the second half of 2020 to early 2021, just here. You know, at the peak of the second lockdown, government did go through quite a bit of unpopularity, but not as unpopular as it is right now. Actually, the government is the most unpopular it's been since before the 2019 general election, sometime in the early to mid-autumn of 2019, when, you know, there's all that paralysis going on in Parliament, and Theresa May had been ousted and whatnot. So the government is very unpopular now, and I said, you know, we did last month's video, and I said if things get even more unpopular, then Boris and the Conservatives will start to worry and will start to panic, and I think that is beginning to set in now. We don't see the disapproval going up as high as it did, you know, in the summer of 2019, where it's at 70%. That's really catastrophic for the government. It's not quite as bad as that, 57%, but nevertheless, the government is now very, very unpopular, and probably more so than you would expect for mid-term of a parliament, to be honest. I just want to show you this very quickly. This is Conservative Home. So assuming there might be an election for the Conservative leadership, and also, of course, the Prime Minister, but it's a Conservative leader that's picked first of all, then the selectorate, after the MPs have whittled the candidates down to the final two, the selectorate will be the Conservative membership. And so I just wanted to show you where the Conservative membership is putting their support from Conservative Home. It's only a snapshot, like only 786 people answered this poll, so a very small sample, but you can clearly see that Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak are well ahead of everybody else. So those two, if they get on to the final two, you know, they're quite evenly tied. Really, Liz Truss has a slight lead there over Rishi Sunak, but there's not all that much in it, really. So it would be a very competitive contest between those two if the Conservative MPs, you know, lead them as the final two to go ahead of the, you know, to go head-to-head with the membership. Other names in there, much lower down, so there's Michael Gove, he's a long way down. Jeremy Hunt, not doing all that well, really, with the Conservative membership. Penny Mordaunt is in third place. Dominic Raab is a very long way down, as is Priti Patel. So, Jacob Rees-Mogg just there. So, yeah, you know, it looks like the leading two are Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, if a vacancy becomes available. And those two end up, you know, as the final two, but the MPs then send out to the rest of the overall Conservative Party. Then it looks like it's quite competitive between those two, with neither of them having a particularly large lead. So it won't be a done deal who the leader and then Prime Minister, you know, becomes. It's not a done deal at all based on that. Right, okay, so let's just go back to here. So the central prediction, anyway, that's all speculative. There's not even a vacancy yet. We'll see what happens over the next few days and weeks, of course. And if the vacancy does become available, then of course I will do a video looking at how those names are polling with people. But at the moment, there's no contest going on, so we'll leave it there. So come back here, find me the central projection for the next UK general election is for Labour to be 18 short of an overall majority. They would be able to govern with that either as a minority or be able to do some sort of deal with other parties. And yeah, big turnaround on what we had in the summer when Labour were a long way behind. So, what a 6 months it's been, hasn't it? Right, okay, so that's it then for this month's Opinion Poll Tracker thread. Tracker video. We will do another one in February, and between now and then there might be a video appearing. If a contest does appear, if Boris Johnson resigns as Conservative leader, then we will probably do another video that focuses specifically on who is his favour within the Conservative membership and probably the wider public as well. Okay, so there you go. That's your January 2022 Opinion Poll Tracker video. If you enjoyed this video, found it interesting and informative, please can you like, share and subscribe. Thank you so much, everybody, for doing that, and we shall see you soon with more. But for this one, that's all for now, and thanks for watching.